Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are back with another brand new Jurassic World Rebirth release, and on top of that, it is actually a Plannosaurus release from Bandai. This is the second to last, as I believe only the Quetzalcoatlus remains from these figures. I don't know if there are intentions of making more. Maybe. I doubt it because, I don't know that there's all that many more species that Bandai would probably want to create. Like, I can't see them making like a D-Rex or anything like that, even though I'd love to see it, or a Mutodon or anything like that, but this one is pretty exciting. I'm definitely hyped to see what this figure looks like. Of course, we've got some fantastic box art here on the front like we usually do, making the figures look even better than they actually end up being. Actually, like a lot better, because normally they are a little lacking overall when it comes to their appearance, but you can see as we move through, again, you've got pretty much the standard images and stuff here on the box like we usually see on the Plannosaurus figures. So once you open it up in typical Plannosaurus fashion, I can already tell, yep, you've got a ton of stuff included, as well as, of course, those ugly, horrible stickers that, give us the color for our figure, the alternate, patterns and stuff, and then lots of little pieces to put together. So I'm going to go ahead, pull all of this out, assemble the skeleton, and then we'll check it out from there. So we've got the box there sitting in the background as we go ahead and continue assembling this, but just like with the others, we've got a super cool backdrop that you can see, and of course it's pretty much exactly what you would expect. It's the backdrop of that kind of field where you do see these Titanosaurs in the film, and again, it looks pretty cool. You can also see some of the other Titanosaurs back there, so really love the fact that they always give you a little display. Then we of course have the skeleton version, and it looks really nice, honestly. You can see, again, it's a pretty epic looking skeleton of the Titanosaurus, and I think they did a pretty good job on it. As you move up, you can see the skull looks really well done. You do have an articulated jaw on the skull, which is pretty awesome. You also can articulate the upper part of the head, which of course in typical Plannosaurus fashion, if you move it too much, it's going to pop out. That's just the way it is, but it's easy to pop back in. So again, left and right, up and down, and can swivel. As you move down through the neck, you can see the actual bones of the neck look really good and pretty decently detailed. Again, they're not going to be highly detailed, but they look decent enough. You can of course articulate the neck about halfway through, actually maybe a little more, and that's about as far forward and back as you can get it. You do also of course have another spot down here which can go down pretty far. Actually, that's about as far down, that's about as far up, but again, this helps to give you kind of like very interesting poses that you can create with the skeleton portion of the dinosaur. As you move back, you've got of course like the spinal column, the vertebrae, the rib cage, the shoulder blade, all of the stuff that you would expect to see on a dinosaur skeleton, on a Titanosaur skeleton. It all pops together pretty nicely, and for the most part, even though of course some pieces, once you're articulating them, pop out, they do stay together pretty well. I will say that. Definitely, these figures stay together better in the skeleton phase than they do in the full body phase. As you move down, you also have front leg articulation, forward and back. Can also move out away from the body a little bit, and then you also have elbow articulation, which can go forward and back as my camera loses focus. Moving back further, again, you continue to see that it looks quite nice. You've got like a nice tan tone for the color of the skeleton. You do of course also have hip articulation, forward and back, also out away from the body, and then knee articulation forward and back, pretty much just like we saw on the front leg. And then moving out into the tail, you can see, of course, we've got a really nice long tail for a dinosaur like this. You can as well articulate the tail up and down. You don't have a whole lot of range of motion, but it's all right. And of course, you've got another section out here, which you can continue to articulate. That's really about it, as far as the articulation goes. And now it just popped off because of course it would. But again, everything looks quite nice as far as the actual skeleton version goes. I think they, consistently, well, something else fell off. Now the leg fell off because of articulating. They consistently do a pretty good job as far as the overall, visual goes. And, once you get it set up in a pose that you like and you don't have to worry about the pieces falling off again, it does look pretty cool and definitely fun to have, something like this as far as like a Titanosaurus skeleton for, again, Jurassic World Rebirth. But we've got to keep going, so let's go ahead, get the rest of the body on it, and we'll check it out from there. So here is our Titanosaurus now put together, and I think this is always the best you know, like part of the figure itself. Once it's put together before the stickers go on it, the figures usually look pretty good. And just like with the Spino, I can say with confidence that this Titanosaurus is really, really nicely done and would, in my opinion, be one of the best looking versions out for this dinosaur anywhere. You could see starting in the head sculpt is actually really highly detailed, and the fine detail itself is actually pretty crisp. And one thing I've noticed about some of the figures, it's a little washed out. Not at all the case, it seems, with this one. The detail looks great there in the face. You can see all sorts of creases there around the eye. We do, of course, also still have an articulated jaw. Doesn't open super wide, but still works. You can also still articulate this section of the head up and down a little bit, but some nice left and rights. You can kind of tilt it a little bit as well, which is really nice. As we move back, we do have that sort of like sail-like area here on the back of the neck. You can also see the skin texture again continues to look really nice. We do have a gray for the upper body, and then a lighter tone, kind of like a creamy color here for the lower jaw, moving down through the throat and the underside of the dinosaur. Obviously, the transition is very abrupt because these are two separate pieces you just have to piece together, but if you really wanted it to look really good, you could, of course, always repaint the figure completely and make it look really nice. But as you move down, of course, the neck gets larger, but the detail continues to look really nice. You do still have articulation right here and in the bottom of the neck, and as you can see, it works pretty nicely. So you can still articulate that spot, and then of course this spot can go down, so you can get some really nice poses. And unlike the Takara Tomy version, it doesn't look awkward like when you do that. And you can see they've got this really nice little spot here where that area can articulate, but it still works and looks pretty smooth the entire way through. So I think the articulation in the neck area is really well done. As you move down into the body itself, you've got more very nice looking skin texture, like a nice dark wash would really crawl in and out of all of those cracks and crevices in the skin and make them pop very nicely. Moving down into the legs, obviously you can see some awkwardness, like it gets a little bit thicker here when it comes to the articulation. Almost makes it look like it actually is wearing boots, but I think it still looks okay. You can still move the legs forward and back. Looks like we're about that far back. You can go pretty far forward, and then you can, of course, also still articulate the elbows. Obviously, the articulation isn't going to be quite as impressive as you see, you know, on the skeleton version, but it still works pretty nicely. You've got the feet sculpted pretty decently. Of course, you're not going to have any paintwork or anything for the nails. As you move down, the detail on the underside still looks really good. Moving back into the rear leg, you've got the hip bone there kind of protruding through the skin. Of course, still articulation here in the hip region, forward and back. And these areas can still move out away from the body just a little bit. Same deal with the front legs, which you can see. You still have articulation in the knee. It's not, again, super impressive, but you could still get some pretty decent poses out of the figure. You, of course, have the foot sculpt looking really nice. Musculature and everything moving through the body looks really good. And then we lead out into the tail, and the skin texture again still looking really nicely done. We have the second half of that little sail-like area that pops up on the tail of the dinosaur. The light tone of the underside does disappear again very abruptly as you lead out, and then you basically just have that, you know, primary gray, that darker gray tone for the rest of the body. But you do still, of course, also have articulation. You can move the tail up and down right here, and then this spot up and down as well, just to give you a little bit more posability with the figure. Not a whole lot, but just a little bit. But the figure as a whole, I think, is definitely one of the nicest looking versions of the Titanosaurus that has come out so far. And also the pieces are actually holding together pretty nicely on this one. I'm not really having much of any issues with the pieces popping off or anything, which is really nice. But now we are at the point where I'm going to have to go ahead and throw the stickers on just so we can see what the entire figure looks like. And, you know, you can then decide once you get it if you want to use the stickers or just repaint it yourself. So let's go ahead, get that done, and we'll check it out. And here it is, now fully assembled with the stickers and everything. And honestly, the stickers actually look pretty decent on this one, which I am surprised by. Like, normally I absolutely despise the stickers. They don't look great. Like, you can see at the end of the tail, it looks a little awkward, but for the most part, they're far better than I expected them to be. Do they wash some of the detail out? Yeah, a little bit, but you can see it doesn't look half bad. The areas match up pretty nicely with the tone of color on the underside. I kind of expected them to look off, but they don't really. Like, from a distance, you can see it looks pretty nice. Even the eyes, look a little bit goofy, but they're not too bad. The like sail-like areas are also quite vibrant when it comes to the stickers and the way they look. So maybe I'm just warming up to it, I don't know, but I think that the stickers on this one don't look nearly as bad as some of the others. The last two, the Spino and this one, I think look pretty decent when it comes to the stickers. And the good thing is they didn't give me stickers for the claws, so if I want the claws to have color, I guess I just have to paint them. But I think the stickers on the claws look horrible every time. You do also have a nice plastic stand. Somehow it's got scratches on it already, but you can see it is basically a brown. It is translucent as well, so it kind of gives you the look of like an earthy area, and you do have the Jurassic logo right there, so you can then display your Titanosaurus on there. So it looks really cool. I'm actually really excited about this one. As far as a size goes for the Titanosaurus, it is by far the biggest of the group. Lengthwise, you were looking at about 14 3/4 inches or around 37.5 centimeters. And for the height in the position it's currently in, to the top of that like sail-like area, just shy of 6.5 inches or around 16.5 centimeters for a size comparison. There is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Golovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect Day Human Being next to our Plannosaurus Titanosaurus, and you can see again, looking pretty decent and definitely has a decent size to it, but at the same time, it's by no means huge. So I would say when it comes to like the Titanosaurus, this might be one of the most convenient models overall so far, because it's not huge like the giant Mattel one, but it's not tiny and awkward looking like the Takara Tomy version. I would say that this is a really nicely sized, quite convenient sized version that does look pretty good overall. Here we have a comparison with the Takara Tomy version, and you can see again that the Plannosaurus version looks significantly nicer than the Takara Tomy version, but it's also a little bit bigger. And then when it comes to the only other sauropod in the Plannosaurus line, we also have the Brachiosaurus, which you can see is pretty similar in size to the Titanosaurus, but I think we have just a little bit more length on the Titanosaurus, making that the largest Plannosaurus figure so far. And then when it comes to a comparison with a few of the other Plannosaurus figures that are in the Rebirth line, here is the Mosasaurus, which you can see is the only one that is competition as far as a size goes, but the Titanosaurus still, in my opinion, takes the cake as far as the biggest. We've also got the Spinosaurus, which you can see is, of course, quite a bit smaller. And then last but not least, we have Ember the Tyrannosaurus Rex, who looks like he's about to try to take a bite out of the chest of our Titanosaurus, but again, significantly smaller, no doubt. So this brand new Bandai Jurassic World Rebirth Titanosaurus in the Plannosaurus line is actually really nice. I would say it's probably my favorite Plannosaurus figure so far. I didn't think I'd find one that I liked more than the Spinosaurus from Rebirth, but this is definitely the nicest overall. Even with the usage of the stickers, I think it still looks really good. The sculpt is extremely well done, very vibrant, very impressive as far as the fine detail, and I don't think the stickers really hide that fact. Like a lot of the areas of this do not really have stickers where you have very impressive fine detail, and even the areas that do have the stickers, you could still see the detail pretty nicely. So I think, overall it looks really good and definitely the best as far as the sculpt goes. It also looks quite screen accurate, I would say, as far as its general appearance, and the colors are pretty nice as a whole as well. The articulation is also pretty decent, and even once you actually have all of the pieces connected, it still articulates pretty nicely. Obviously, it's not like super articulated or anything, but the articulation that it does have looks good, works well, and does of course add a little extra to it as far as posability. So overall, this is definitely, in my opinion, the best Plannosaurus figure, not just of Rebirth, but in general, to come so far. Now, of course, that could change when we get the Quetzalcoatlus out, but I don't see that happening. I think this is going to take the cake as far as the best overall. So if you are interested, I actually purchased this one on Aliexpress, so you can grab it there, or you can grab it on Big Bad Toy Store, or I think Amazon also has it available. So one way or another, definitely worth grabbing. Make sure you do so if you want it, and like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.